Thank you all for coming. I started HR Amplify about 2 years ago. I didn't have peers in HR, and I was doing work, and I was like, who do I talk to? What do I do? I'd be glad and honored that I get to sit in a room with each of you, all of us together, just to be able to share, talk. Nothing more than that. The intention here is, I'm actually calling it In the Room, and that it's just a monthly conversation, and we're focused on the work and the people doing it. I think a lot of conversation that I lean in is the VPs and they're a little higher up, and it's not always about the careers that we're trying to drive within HR and those skills as well as the competencies of HR as we move through our career. Each of us are sitting in the role today. It's such an important conversation to have together, to be able to be like, what's going on? Some days I'm like, I don't know what HR is anymore, is or isn't. And each of you in this room is very intentional. I think together there's a range of experiences and scopes that we own that all sit within HR, but it doesn't look the same. There's over a couple decades of HR in the room across levels and companies and types of work that we do. And I think that's such an important conversation to have, right? It doesn't look the same. So tonight is just about that. We'll touch two sides, the skills that we need to be in the job that we are, and then there's the competencies, so the way we get the work done. There's not a right or wrong to the conversation. I'm going to try not to sound cooler than I really am. I either did the work or I didn't do the work. That's it. We're all here, and this is our conversation just around the work. Just to keep us anchored in the room, what we'll do is we'll go round robin. We'll say our name, title, and company, and the scope of work that you do. And then we'll answer the one question is, how did you actually end up in HR? I'm looking right at you.
Name, Annette Vandamos. My title is HR Director, and I work for a inventory management software company called Clarity RFID. And my role as HR Director is just really end-to-end HR, owning everything across the employee lifecycle, from recruitment to onboarding, also doing BP work in between, supporting senior leadership. We just had a big reorg. You name it, it's me and my team of one. I have one direct report. And then the question around how did I get into HR? When I was doing my bachelor's at UM, I did an internship because I was just exploring, like I was an undergrad in business and I was doing an internship. Let me just learn more, and I was going to do a finance one, I was going to do this HR one, sounds cool. I picked it because of the company. It was Sony Pictures, and that division was responsible for the creative content and advertising and everything for all the Latin America soap operas. They had an office in Miami Beach. That's a cool company. You can learn so much from the books, but then when you get to the real world, you're like, wow, my boss, she was just like consulted by every business leader on so many different topics, and they trusted her opinion. And it wasn't just payroll and benefits. They were like making real impactful decisions together in a room. And I'm like, wow, there's so much more to HR. I'm like, I think this is a cool avenue for me to pursue. So that's how I got into HR.
I'm Donna Rubin. I currently work at Stripe, which is a fintech payments processing company. I'm an HR business partner there. The scope of my role is that I get assigned to certain clients internally within the company, supporting certain leaders, certain executives at the top. I partner with them on some of the more strategic elements of what they have to do around people in their organization, whether it's thinking through org design, what do they need in other organizations, leadership development, what do they need from their leaders, how is that emulating across their teams, where are there areas that are not functioning in their orgs, why is that, what's the root cause, how do we fix those situations, performance and compensation cycles, and going through those rhythms, but at a larger scale, doing things like workforce review, org health dynamics, and addressing root issues and making those things better. So it's all in all both a better employee experience, but also beneficial to the business. I've been there 2 years, and I've had a variety of changes of which client within the company I work with, but all on the tech side. How did I end up in HR? I was the symptom of graduating around a time of an economic crisis, and so I started my career in nonprofit because, well, that was the only job I could get. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and a few years into it, I was not completely sold that I was a nonprofit lifer. And so I was like, what else can I do? I've been working for a couple of years. Where are my skills transferable? And when I looked at my portfolio in the nonprofit space, recruiting had a lot of parallels because I was recruiting for certain programs. And so I was like, let's see if I can get a job in the recruiting space. I got hired as a recruiting coordinator, which I was really excited about in the beginning. Then in my first year as the company, my role ended up changing into a more programmatic job for a new grad rotation program. For this cohort, I had to build a custom onboarding experience, learning and development boot camps, talent matching on what rotations they should do. There was that element, manager coaching, kind of a whole slew of things for this group. At the same time, the company hired a new head of people who really articulated what the HR competencies were, what it should actually look like versus how we were functioning. And when she talked about the HR business partner, people partner job, I got really excited about the fact that it touched all these dimensions, but also had this really strong relationship aspect with you have a client, you partner with them on these things organizationally. And gravitated towards that. I wanted to move into that and got an opportunity and have just been in that discipline ever since.
I'm Janet Hayspell, and I currently work for Restaurant Brands International, RBI. I'm an HR business partner supporting a few groups across our corporate and shared services teams. Been with the company less than a year. The one thing that I was told in all of my interviews with RBI is we are lean teams. Lean teams. That is all I heard. I don't think I fully grasped what that meant until I started. You have a huge volume of work, heavy workload, and very few people to actually execute it. I'm really doing full scope of the HR business partner work, partnering with leadership, then also doing workday tasks, working on org design with our CIO, but then also today I had to let go of a very junior level employee, walking through severance, dealing with ER issues, performance management, our compensation cycle. We're going through salary review right now and all of our merit planning for next year. So full gamut of kind of just the really essentially an HR generalist. Also doing a lot of the partnering with leadership as well to how do we drive the future of their org, what's your roadmap look like, what are your strategic priorities for the next year, the next 5 years, and how do we make sure we have an org that supports the work that you need to do, which is the fun stuff, but then a lot of so doing a lot of that. And how I got into HR was completely by accident. I was in a role, I was an executive assistant working at Gap and hated it, and was very open with my boss actually when I was hired. I was like, I'm looking for my next role. I can do this job and I have been doing this job for a while, but I'm really looking for a company I can grow with, I can do something different, because I had done a whole bunch of things prior to being an executive assistant. Was in sales, was in PR, just ran the gamut in the New York City like fashion world, and was just doing all these different things, and somehow ended up as an executive assistant. But I told him I really don't want to do this job anymore. I remember when I started, actually the VP that I was supporting, he had just come over from running the business in Europe. They brought him over to oversee the business in the US. As a part of his new leader assimilation, our head of HR came, and she just had this amazing presence. She was so kind, similar to what you were talking about with someone that you were reporting into. Everybody went to her for just everything. She was just so well respected, and I just admired her so much. A junior coordinator role opened up under her, and I had never ever wanted to be in HR, but I was like, you know what, it's reporting to her. Right. Let me interview for this job. She was like, honestly, Janet, you actually don't even have to interview. You've got the job. I was like, oh, okay, so that was easy. That was 7 years ago, and have just slowly made my way working up through the kind of generalist space.
Hi, I'm Annette Vandamos. I'm currently at Frida. It's a CPG company headquartered here in Miami. I'm on the talent acquisition team. I'm a senior recruiting coordinator. The scope of my role is basically we have 2 recruiters who are doing the screens, and then I take from that point candidate and walk them through the entire interview process. Then I do the off letters, onboarding. It's a lot of just like operations and making sure that the candidate experience is top notch. How I got to HR, I come from a slightly more non-traditional background. I worked in New York for 10 years in fashion industry. I was a later bloomer. I went to school in my 20s. I got my undergrad. I was like, all right, what do I want to do? One of my friends were like, you're so good with people. Explore HR. I studied psychology, wanted to be a therapist, but then realized I cannot deal with personal issues. I'll try HR. My first internship was at Vera Wang in New York. I loved it. The internship was to hire interns for the company. I loved interviewing. I loved finding the new talent, also building their careers, helping people build their careers while also hopefully helping business continue to succeed. That's how I ended up, and like I started exploring more. Then I moved to Seattle, got a job at a tech company, focused also on TA, then helped with HR stuff, and kind of like still in this like exploring HR space. Even here, like at this current job, I've been doing some of the performance management, generalist project, like sometimes learning and development help, and so it's I'm exploring and I love it.
First quarter, I would say, of my career was recruiting, then turned generalist. That's where I'll say. I do a little bit of everything space, so I don't get stuck doing the things that I don't appreciate. I completely fell into HR. The recruiting side, it was, I guess, a combination also, like my project management skills were strong. So I started my career at Gap as a contractor. I always tell people, go contract, do assignments, just really helped my career. Maternity leave, I don't know if that's still a thing, but got a few jobs that way that linked into companies and a lot of exposure. I started with Gap when they were bringing over the merchandising team. They didn't have a recruiter in the office. So I was their first merchandising recruiter, and I didn't look back. So that was fun until I would say about the last 5 years. I've been in the generalist space. I fell into HR and I struggled. I didn't want to be in HR for many years. I was good at it and I stuck it out, but I think the pieces that I found doing it your way is the right way to HR.
Yeah.
And then I resonated. And I was like, okay, cool, I got this. Before we jump into the conversation component, clarify the distinction we're going to talk about tonight. Allies versus advocates. Allies matter, they support, and then advocates go a step further than allies. They're really the voice of influence. They take some level of risk on your behalf. They're speaking in the room that you're not in. In HR, we often have allies, and I think we are allies to many, and I wouldn't even say advocates of many because we're in most conversations. I wanted to talk about what it looks like and how it helps us and supports us in building our careers and advocacy as a skill within HR. We're just going to start with a question. What's the difference in practice between someone supporting you and someone advocating for you?
I think back to my favorite manager and what made him my favorite manager. I think it was a couple things. It was him seeing my potential and then making space to harness that. As opposed to be like, oh, you're doing a good job, kind of support. He was like, I see this untapped skill that you have. Let me spend time with you. We did HR version pair programming with building dashboards and other things. He A, spent the time investing in a skill and like actually teaching, and then B, he advocated to put me on a project where I didn't necessarily have the experience to do it in the past, but I had potential, and he staffed me on something and it stretched me even further. That really felt an advocate because he wasn't, I feel like I've spent so much of my career in spaces where they want to hire someone who can already do the job and staff people on where they're already capable instead of this like advancement and stretching. He really was that advocate. She can do this. I'm going to put her something on something she hasn't done before. Let's see where it goes. And that really felt like it was distinguished versus I've had allies where like people are supportive and they like say good job. Now my role changed a little bit and I felt like my boss was being an ally in terms of aligning an interest of mine into a new opportunity. But it isn't that next step of I want to really propel Donna into that next space or possibility.
So seeing your potential and then speaking up for it.
And almost taking like a risk.
Being like, no, I'm sure she can. I know, it's just funny calling it allies and advocate because I don't know that I would have used that word champion or one might want to say manager.
Sponsor.
It does seem like a manager type of step to stand in, but does anyone else experience?
I also think about my favorite manager as well. She was like early on in my career, so I was with my first company, my first full-time job like for 11 years. It was a great company. It was a great way to start HR because it was like very sophisticated, very built out HR function. My one manager in particular, I see her as an advocate is because she would always, when I'm not in the room with other colleagues in other departments, she would always speak about me, my accomplishments. Without me, she would talk about my skills so that when an opportunity became available, people knew of me. It wasn't like the first time that they were hearing about me. Before I was even ready, already speaking up about me. Eventually she knew I would be ready and eventually opportunity would come up. So she carved a path for me. And then the other thing that I think she also did, not only did she support me, but like she pushed me way outside my comfort zone. Because I'm always like the type of person, I want to know every detail about everything. I want to research. I want to like really know my facts and figures before like I embark on supporting a new country or a new situation or whatever. She's, you have the foundation. You're never going to know everything about everything. You just got to do it. And use what you have. Use the tools in your toolbox. Just do it. You got it. But she gave me like that confidence as well and pushed me out there. And sometimes I felt like, damn, like you're throwing me into the lion's den. She's, you can do it. And I did. And when I did it, was it perfect? No, but she also taught me that's okay. Because I was also limiting myself by being like, oh, I have to be perfect. I have to get it. Oh, I don't have all the tools. I don't have all the experience. She's like, no, you got the foundation. Apply it. I'll guide you along the way. You mess up. It's okay. Like you got it 90% of the way there. It's fine. Yeah. I think that's a really
How long did you report into this manager?
Like 4 years.
Wow.
Oh, that's nice.
That.
But I was expecting it to be a moment, but 4 years is very nurturing.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that example or like that kind of like experience, you sometimes don't know. Maybe sometimes I just try to justify maybe people when they're not good managers.
I don't think businesses incentivize people. We talk about retaining talent, but at the end of the day, the business is trying to achieve what it wants to achieve and they want guarantees. obviously there is a guarantee when you see someone has an innate ability to get things done. There's still a mental block sometimes. I have this business goal. I'm going to put someone I know can deliver on it versus has the potential to deliver on it. The ratio of a manager's, at least almost everywhere I've worked, the ratio of how much they are rewarded for being that amazing manager and investing in retaining that talent and pushing them is not very high in comparison to I have all these business objectives that I need to keep. And so unless, this is where I think HR has such a big tie to company culture. It's like, what are you recognizing people for? Those are the behaviors they're going to emulate. That then creates a culture around you. I just think there are some people that have an amazing ability to both do and reach their goals. And it is probably they saw an example that's outside of a lot of the ecosystems I've worked. It's their own way of managing versus the collective.
I had an experience where I realized that I didn't have an advocate. And then I was just like, did I ever have one before? Having looked back and like also realized when I do it for others, I intentionally do it for others. I know I want to make sure that I'm always speaking up for people's work when we're talking about it in the room in the best light, because they're not there. I had this experience in my last full-time role where it was 2.5 years. We were, I would say, 3 peas in a pod. CEO, COO, and myself. We did like two years of just hyper growth in a company, and it was just like 3 of us. Then I started, the role change, and I started really sucking. No one said anything to me. I was so confused as to what was happening. I just remember at the end going to the CEO, and I was just like, am I like getting fired tomorrow? Like, how am I doing? What's going on? I don't know. And I just remember being like, fuck. I always sat with you and been like, that was like a shitty thing to say. Or there was always moments where I was like championing him in his role in his career, and I was just like, God, if there was ever like a moment where I wanted someone to be in the room and then share back and like support, advocate, whatever you want to call it, that really dropped. And I'm not like a person who, I don't walk through careers being like, everyone has my back, because I understand what you're saying. It's like business. Like sometimes we gotta get our own back. We have to do work, but I think there's a respect. See something, say something. It's been 2.5 years, and I still think about this because I was just like, it was very disappointing. I just feel like it's not that the outcome would have changed. I think from a partnership perspective, when you're doing the work together, it's such an easy place to support each other. How do people do it? And how do we do it in HR? Just my reverse engineering of, like, what is it? How do we get it, right? How do we ensure it, actually, within our careers? Because that's people pulling you up is how you get into the next room.
I think you have to be very, what I have learned, again, through, as you both said, your favorite manager, my favorite manager, and she was really my first manager. When I started in HR as that coordinator role, I had a little bit of visibility prior to HR, because as an executive assistant, you work heavily with HR as well, and so had some visibility to what the work was, but she really coached me, she helped, she was amazing, and really just brought me along the journey. I was in the room with her, copied me on every email, just let me absorb it all. I don't think I realized until she left the company and I was reporting into someone new, the difference. How she would always advocate for me in a room that I wasn't in. Or if a room that I was in. Janet worked on this and she's gonna speak to this. Or if she'd be presenting something, I just want you to know, Janet actually did this. I'm presenting it now, but she really worked hard on this. Always advocating for me. I didn't realize until, like I said, I had this next manager after she left, that he would just take credit for my work. Like, I was so like, wait, but
did he take credit, or did he just not share that you did the work?
No, he would, so I did this.
Okay.
And I would be in the meeting and I'm like, you didn't do that. Like, and I'd never been in that experience before. It was so eye-opening that I was like, wow, he's telling me one thing in our one-on-ones. Yeah, you're doing a great job. This was amazing. Oh, this is great work. But then when we're in a room with people that can help to propel my career or put me in a different light, you're not taking any opportunity to do that. With my boss now, I try to be very intentional with her about, look, these are things that make me feel good, feel recognized, feel valued. This is what I appreciate in a manager. And I'm not sure if that's something that you have done in the past, but I just want you to know, as my manager, these are things that I value. Nice. And these are things that can help me to grow. So it's nice to even have a manager that I can have those open conversations with her, and she's willing to be flexible. And she said to me, please let me know if there's something that I'm doing that's bothering, that doesn't work for you. I want to make sure we have a good working relationship. I think that's a key difference for someone, at least someone that you report into, who can help to be your advocate versus just your manager or to some degree your ally.
That's interesting. So if you know that you need one, tool them
to be one.
Tell them what to say almost. talking points. We can do talking points.
Piggyback on that, I had the same thing in one of my previous roles. I had a manager very early in my career. He was always, Anna, you can do that. I see that you can do it. He would put me out there. He would let me present some of the stuff that I would work on for 2 hours HR. He was just like, would put me in the spot of, you did it, you can stand by it, you don't need me to do it for you. And then also putting me into interviewing with candidates. And even as a coordinator, he would never, the role itself was not like, okay, you're just a coordinator. It was like, you can do, and I'm here to support you, but also to advocate for you and also to lift you up rather than like, I'm just going to put you in this place and you're like a coordinator. We're still keeping in touch. It's been 5 years break with my kiddos. Some of those managers that like make you feel confident, like that you can do the job. They feel the advocates for you. They just make you feel better that you can do it.
Do you think that it's hard to ask for advocacy because we sit in HR, or especially because we're in HR roles, from folks that are other than our managers?
I think what I've noticed, sometimes HR people think that other people in HR know how to be advocates. That's innate, and it's not necessarily. I think there's like a kind of like an assumption that if you're in HR, then you're a people person who will like advocate for other people, who will like go and like have your back or have your best interests in mind and stuff like that.
I've also found, I think HR is one of the more political functions.
Oh, 1000%. Yes.
It took me a long time to internalize that. When I like look at the parallels of the orgs I support and how decisions are made and how things are done compared to like when you're in HR, you do things differently. I've been anticipated multiple reorgs. I've future predicted how my job's changed twice now in the last couple months. You get the rhythms when you actually do it for a living. It feels like a different ecosystem. I've worked at like now 5 or so tech companies where I'm like, this feels like a pattern, not a specific set of leaders. I think that does come into like, how am I curating for my employees? Because in tech, it's a little less political than I think some other industries. I don't know, that's been like an interesting observation. Like when you are an HR professional working in an HR team, it just feels a little different. I also think you used the word insured, and that really stuck with me. I think I'm getting to a point in my career where it's like, how do I insure myself versus looking to my manager to do it? Every company rewards different things. I've been spending actually a lot of time thinking about lately is, what do I value? Where do I want to contribute? Where does that, or does that not align with what the company values? I am a massive team player. I will pick up the buck if someone else can to make sure that the right outcome comes in. And I don't know if where I work actually wants to reward that. I don't have an opinion yet, but I'm starting to pay attention to the question. I think this is what matters, is that what is gets someone ahead in their career. And I'm just looking at it differently, and where are there opportunities for me to tackle something and give myself advocating, or what was the other word you used? Advocating for myself instead of waiting for my manager. We had someone start last year who's just like really great at this. I really respect her and been like, how do you think about solving problems and doing things? That's helped me think of a bit different ways of more self-emboldenedness, and what are things that are pain points for me but that would also have great impact and also high visibility. One thing I did in that spirit was, we have a page that's who is my HRBP, and it helps people understand who to go to. We also work in a scaled HR model where we have HR business partners, and we call them people consultants or HR generalists. This page has lived and has been outdated, and the way that it was written completely did not explain the model well, and people just didn't read it and found the first name that they could find. And it was so painful. It was like the amount of rerouting that we had to do. People were not ending up at the right. It was a bad employee experience. It was an infuriating HR experience. And we did all this other work against the people consultant, people partner model, and this was just the thing no one wanted to deal with. I was flabbergasted. I was asking for permission for a while, and then I decided to stop asking for permission. I went and I drafted a rewrite, and it stuck, and I got all the leads on board, and we fixed the page. I didn't have to be like, can I do this? Because it was solving actually such an important problem, it was a self-advocacy moment. And then we got it live in December, and then we come into this year, and someone else on our people analytics team, she wrote in one of our sections, this is super random, but I noticed the rewrite, and it's awesome. Props to whoever did it. And my name starts getting tagged in this like random Slack channel. It just was such a big lesson. Ask for permission. Is this the right way to use my time? I do think I'm still learning what matters to leadership, but this was such a prime example of, my boss isn't going to give me permission. This working group is sure as hell not giving me permission, even though I can see it's so important. I went and did the thing. As I think about this year, how do you ensure it? You do it for yourself. Or do 80%, not the 95 perfection. did. It's been a lesson that really stuck with me. When I think about where I want, because over the last 4 years, I've reached a certain part of being an HR business partner where I'm a certain level of seniority and I don't know what's next. I'm surrendering to needing that answer, but I still want to move forward. I'm rewiring how I'm approaching some of those things.
Sometimes your work can be the advocacy for you.
Exactly.
If you keep doing the things that you want to be doing and speaking without permission, then your work advocates because it's like, hey, Donna, and then someone can.
The work got me in the room, no one else.
Exactly.
I think one of the things that you said too is something that I have been learning and I think is a really key skill to learn is what matters to leadership, what is important to the company, what's valued and what is going to get you recognized.
Yeah.
That is something that is so critical to learn, and I think it took me I don't want to say too long, but I wish I had learned it.
Yeah, totally.
I always tell people it's a business at the end of the day.
Exactly.
If there's no business, there's no job. So and if there's, no one's here. So we can't say yes to everything, but can we say yes to? It's always been like, let me tell you what we can do. Does any of this interest you? Or this is the interesting section with the yes over here.
Because you think it's okay, this is my job. This is what I do. This is what I've been told is my job and these are my responsibilities. But at the end of the day, sometimes those things that you're doing do not have value to leadership. They're not worried about those things. I think the other thing that when you think about your own career and how you want to move forward, how do you marry up, like you said, what you enjoy doing and how can you tie that to what leadership values, what the business is trying to achieve to help drive like your own like satisfaction, career growth, but also getting that visibility, getting that recognition, and for the leadership and the business to really see, oh wow, she's amazing. That's something actually that I learned from my boyfriend. We have completely different jobs. He's not in HR in any way, shape, or form. But he is really so good. He's charismatic. He's great at talking to people, but he's really good at, this is what I like. This is what I want to work. I'm going to find a way to see how I can do that and how do I tie it to like the business and what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I love that. Aligning yourself to the work, but then the work also aligning to you and how you want to do it, and then ask for forgiveness.
Exactly.
Oops, I just wrote something and it works. And it's amazing. It's working now. People, it's funny. I love that. So, performance management, right? I think that's a big part of where advocacy either happens or it doesn't happen. And either people are supporting us, like some people who speak up, some people who name the potential, which we talked a lot about. In another episode would be like, when does potential end, right? Because we all reminisced back to our first manager. This is where we are right now in our careers. Advocacy doesn't stop. Sounds like obviously we need to help ourselves a little bit with that. But performance management opens the door, right? And it also closes them. So it's always the final, what is your performance review? People don't remember all the conversations, but it is what you documented into the system. We're going to shift to reflecting on performance management, not just as a process, but also a place where advocacy either shows up or it doesn't. One might say it disappears. The review you thought you were going to have may or may not be. So just curious, like, what does your performance management look like in your org today?
When you say performance management, are you saying top performers all the way to the bottom? Are we talking about the underperforming performance management?
It's loaded to all of us that are in it because it's not always one thing that's performance management. But there is a process that as a competency, as a tool to get work done.
The process in my org, I would love for it to be different. And I'm one by one coaching leaders on this because I think performance, those conversations should be happening regularly. It's like in my one-on-one with my direct report every week, we always talk about, I always share with her, hey, this was great this past week. Here are some things we need to work. That should be an ongoing conversation so that we come to year end, it's not a complete surprise to you on how I rate. I may be doing that in a different way than other people are handling performance. Like we have these competencies, we've got way too many competencies, 15 competencies that each person is assessed against, and they're the same across.
Person is 50. Oh, they're the same across.
Why are we assessing? They're by level, but why are we assessing someone in marketing the same against the same competencies as someone in tech? It doesn't make any sense. And then the manager has to write this summary. I had a conversation today with a manager who is bringing to me performance concerns for someone who has been an issue for years. First thing I do is pull up his year-end assessment. When I read this year-end assessment summary, sounds like he's great, but you're saying this has been going on for years. So talk to me about this disconnect, because I am not bringing anything to legal with this summary right now. We've got to start from scratch, essentially. In my opinion, it's got to be those honest conversations. That's helping to really give people that feedback that they need to be able to grow, to have that strong, okay, I had a really good performance conversation with my boss. Look, maybe she talked about some things that I missed, but she really gave me that coaching and that feedback. That's, for me, the ideal situation for performance management.
So what would you say the breakdown is in your process?
I think the breakdown is that we do not properly train leaders. There's no, okay, you're going to be a people manager, so you've got to go through this course. We have a course, but it is completely optional. For me, I now have a full list of, okay, these leaders all need to go through this course because it's people management 101. I think it's the training and something that you said before, it's like leaders don't get rewarded for having that skill set, for growing and retaining talent. I think there's also a disconnect in we need to have that as something that maybe leaders are assessed against. How are we holding them accountable?
That is interesting. Because obviously I know we talk about performance if everyone's underperforming or if churn is high on a particular team, we'll flag that as said manager, but there's not a reverse necessarily for doing wonderfully other than a promotion if there is one. I've never championed anyone for thank you for being honest in your performance. I think when I've seen it finally where I thought it should be based off of my thoughts, I was like, thank you. I'm glad that we've arrived here because I think this is more accurate. You can't have different conversations when it's all doing a great job.
Everything's great.
Correct. I've never championed the other way, which is interesting. Of cool, your team's on it. So I would say that's what performance is missing, right? A focus on the who's not performing and weeding out.
And not retention,
Interesting.
talent.
Yeah, I think it's just like the whole system is antiquated and broken, and we try to use it for too many things, for too many goals. Like, what is the purpose of performance management?
Right.
What is the purpose? Is it a way of measuring people's goals against company goals to help the company succeed? The goal of it, or is it to find out who your underperformers are and weed them out of the business? Is it to make sure somebody meets a certain level of performance to give them their merit increase? Because that's also what happens in your scenario. Why people do not give negative reviews is because if they do, if it's in certain companies below a certain rating, you're not eligible for merit. What is the purpose? You have to be really clear. What are you trying to solve with performance management? I think that's the problem. We try to put too many things in there, and you can't do all with that. It's an all-encompassing process. Too many objectives that are conflicting.
People only want to spend a specific amount of time on it. I've tried to propose an annual calendar where we do performance cycles. We have them twice a year. Maybe we do a talent review the other 2 quarters of the year. The talent reviews are much more focused on who are our top performers. Are we making sure we're aligning them on the top? Are they on our top priorities? People are but we spend so much time at annual review time, I don't want to separate it. And then that becomes, to your point, this cluster of too much at the same time. And I find I've had a couple times where I've been able to really have a proper annual thing and we separate out different focus conversations. The irony is that then you come to the review cycles and they attend less time because you'll know the talent more and you don't have to have these intensely long calibrations because it's a rhythm. The group has more trust because they're talking about talent on a regular basis together. They have more of the same understanding of the bar because they're not looking at it twice. But there's some sort of mental block of performance reviews take up so much time. Listen, I just spent the last 2 hours doing comp reviews. It does take a long time. It's when you go to the gym and you don't go often, it's so hard. But if you're going all the time,
you're in the rhythm.
Unless a leader is very passionate about it, it is not a thing I have been able to break.
It's so hard.
I don't know that I've asked anyone to be passionate about performance reviews as much as honest and clear. I'd rather less is more.
Not passionate about performance reviews, but passionate about talent. If you want to spend time talking about your talent, that then eventually translates into how the performance conversations and what that motion is. But it starts at how we think about talent, and performance is a part of that. Because performance is the past. How have they been performing? Then we all talked about potential. Managers are potential. I remember I used to work at places that would do 9x9 grids about performance and potential, and then we would bifurcate the conversation. There's also been times where you have someone who's a top talent that has just reached their peak. And to your point of a company can change. I was actually having a conversation just today about someone who did a really great job last year. So rewarding them in a year. We're not sure if they can keep pace. And that was such a good way to think about it, but that's so rarely.
Which is not a reflection of them because pace is constant.
Companies change. You're good for this phase, that phase, you can grow with it, right? I think there's this bigger talent umbrella, but we only talk about it in this performance lens, and then to your point, in the performance lens, it's only how to get rid of the people, and then let's make sure we pay the top people, and then we've moved on. And there's so much more to unpack there.
Sure, but by the time you're done with the process, though, you're fuck it.
I'm tired.
They get more paid. It's in it. Interesting. But I think I've worked in orgs where it's they're not gonna, nothing that I'm gonna do as an HR partner is gonna make them care or see about any nurture talent any differently than they already are. But I love your question on that. What do we want performance to do? And then that's a question that can be easily answered based off of what they care about, and use the process
to support that.
Just to support that. I mean, that was one of my learnings. I can't save the world just because I care. HR can't care. I say you can't care any more than anyone else cares, especially the CEO. So if he doesn't care, care.
My manager I talked about, he had, his expression was care 49%. It's on my one-on-one doc, my current manager, because I care more and then care 49%.
It's like I always care.
In my previous, so you guys touched upon what doesn't work right now. The annual review that feels too big, or like a two times per year also feels. In one of the orgs that I work for, we did it quarterly, and yes, some people, engineers, complain about it being too often. But in the same time, it created a dialogue with your manager. And I felt like actually it was very helpful because yes, you're not getting promotion every quarter, like, but there is this like conversation, like where are we going? Then you create a professional development plan, and you're like. And then you look back and okay, in 3 months, how did we move? All right, let's try to do here a little bit more. But it didn't feel like a huge thing that it was more of a smaller conversations that would be great to happen like one-on-ones, but sometimes people don't have. So these like quarterly were like reminders of like actually talk to people more about where are they going, what to expect, or instead of let's check all the boxes in our one-on-ones, have you done this and this, and going through lists, you would take a little moment to talk about the development.
The continuity gives me hope, because sometimes I feel like I'm like, oh man, it's like we just finished court. Could we do like quarterly and one? Like, does this even matter? But I think what I mean is like the continuity of doing it really matters, because at one point in the year it's going to matter to someone. They're going to need it. Either there's like a nice shout out or there's a conversation that needs to be had. So it is that consistency of are you talking about it?
It's also like a muscle that you have to build. Like you don't really know how to like constantly talk about performance, but if you're doing it once a year, it's not a muscle that you're like, if we go to work out like once a week for me, and you're like building on it, and it's the same with performance, the same thing, like you have to build the muscle to have it be effective.
Think about it that way. We can just close down your takeaway from the conversation. What resonated or didn't resonate or got you thinking? We'll just close on that.
I think one of the things like that is a good reminder that it's I know in the back of my mind, but I think like just hearing people talk about it's like HR is done so differently, so many different places and so many different ways, and like kind of that reminder. And I also remember like one of my favorite manager, my first manager in HR telling me, you'll see as you grow in your career in HR, you'll see a lot of different HR leaders. You're not going to agree with how everyone does things, but take pieces of what people do that resonate with you, because that's how you're going to develop as an HR leader and develop your own style. I think that taking that from like all of you and what and just the different organizations you've worked in, and that like you said at the beginning, HR is different. The right way is how you do it.
That's took me back.
I feel like I've had a lot of these lately conversations of what are your expectations from a manager? I'm not in a managerial position, but what are my expectations? How do I like to be led? And it's very interesting to hear of just like your experiences and when you thought of what, you know, in your career was helpful.
It's always funny, just like the flip side of that is I like when people leave me alone. But on the flip side is if they leave me too alone, I'm all like, I'll just be like, I like this, but like once a quarter, like a candy. Like always, I was giving myself a hard time with the advocacy. Has it happened to me? Will it happen to me? Is my career growth dependent on someone speaking up for me? I don't like when things are outside of myself a little bit, right? But I think just wording it back down to your work can advocate for you. And your opinions, your point of view can advocate for you.
I really like that idea, actually. Being self-advocate, your work speak for itself, and just you see a problem, take it on. Yeah. And what are we so afraid of? What's the worst that could happen?
Ask for forgiveness.
You're not going to publish the page. Okay, whatever. That's fine.
Like all the things it's done, even if it's just like term, and then drop it into, and God, I sound so good.
Oh
I was
my
like,
God.
God, who did all of that?
It's true.
Yeah. What are you doing?
I'm still stuck on the word insured. Something about that really struck with me. And whether it's self-advocacy, I think something else that I didn't say, but is how does the business leader become an advocate? You asked this question around who can be an advocate that's not your manager. We didn't.
Correct.
I'm walking away with that question around. I had a leader I worked with. He moved to a new role at the company, then they put us back together. I have an advocate, like he wanted that. And what are some of those other advocacy avenues that isn't just your manager? I'm marinating on that.
Cool. For me, it's always finance. Love the finance team because we're like, cool. I give them what they want, they give it to me, so that's always, that's
huge.
my go-to advocacy there, where it's just like we get each other and we can like, they're mentioning me in conversations and I'm mentioning them in conversations, so that's been a nice partnership. So yeah, managers, whatever. I'll leave it. Cool, we did it.
Thank you for
So nice.